Hello and welcome to another Classic WoW with Mal podcast. We've got a great show lined up for you today. We're going to be talking about the upcoming Zul'Gurub that is going to be released next week, and we're going to be taking a look at how server transfers have made a huge impact on a lot of servers, and we'll be talking, as always, about our great server of Grobulus. But first, how you doing today, Myth?
Doing great. Getting finally up to the right level to get a character power level by all the mages in our guild that are going crazy and solo pulling all these gens.
Yeah, I have joined the boosting crew myself with my mage this past week, and I gotta say it's been a pretty fun ride, really just dismantling entire dungeons by, yourself. It's quite interesting, and we've really seen a huge influx on this being a trend really across all of WoW.
Yeah, I can't imagine, how much money some of these mages are making, because I know that the mages in our guild who just never die at all are one pulling Mara for 10 to 15 gold a pop for 4 people at a time, 4 times an hour, plus they get any of the rare loot that drops. It's got to be absolutely insane gold.
Yeah, I started with SM myself, and what started out as just kind of learning the pulls, and honestly, it had a little bit of a learning curve. It sounds so easy to, they're just gonna kill an entire instance all in one pull. Now, there's a lot of intricacies. There's a lot of wipes that are involved, but once you get it down, it can be very lucrative. And like you said, you fill up a group, and you're just that gold starts rolling in, and it's just continued to change the way that I think we're viewing WoW Classic and just kind of pushing the boundaries of what we thought were possible. And even now we're kind of getting into this new meta where we're trying to say, okay, I've pulled all of this. Can I get even a little bit more out of it? Is there anything more that I can squeeze out of this? And are there any other dungeons that this is possible for?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've figured out pretty much the entire game at this point. It's pretty quick to level someone in SFK up to the point where they can do Scarlet Monastery. Then you can do Scarlet Monastery up until Maradon up until BRD, and now we even have mages doing strat clearing.
Yeah, if you so wish to, there is a 1 to 60 boosting path available for your characters. I got one of my characters up as kind of on the side while I was learning the pulls, and I was kind of comparing it though to what it's like to just grind it out yourself, and it really depends. I think a lot of the benefit is people really enjoy that ability to AFK and not necessarily have to focus on the game and still get some characters leveled up. But I gotta say, there's still a lot of benefit to going and questing efficiently, and I was kind of just running the math myself with 2 different hunters that I was doing, and I was surprised to say that while the boosting was good, efficient grinding and questing is still number 1 in my book if I want to get someone 1 to 60 the fastest.
I don't know if that's because there's a lot of waiting around, right? Excuse me. But I think if you're doing it perfectly efficiently, I don't know if you can beat these power levelers. I've seen screenshots of people with sub 3 days played hitting 60 because of how crazy these power leveling groups are.
Yeah, I think that if you have maximum efficiency the entire time, then you're a lot more likely to get an outcome that's competing with some of the fastest 1 to 60s in the world and potentially even beating them. At the same time, though, that's seldomly kind of how it ends up playing out, is what I've noticed. There's, usually people going AFK and, this and that. So you sort of have to balance that. Is this a gold grinding thing or a maximum efficiency thing? Or is it really just a sit back and relax and, get some levels with someone else doing the work thing? There's kind of something for everybody in there, though, which is what's interesting about it, right? There's a few different ways to approach that, and there's just a lot of different benefits, which is why it's kind of become a phenomenon that's kind of taken hold at a larger scale than I've ever seen before.
Yeah, at any point, if you slash who Scarlet Monastery, there's like 35 max level mages in different groups boosting people. It's absolutely insane. Every server is like on fire with this concept right now. But it's like you said, there's people who are gaining benefit at every level. Like there are people who are able to work and have their character be power level just for paying gold. There's people who, several of the mages that I know in our guild that are doing this enjoy the challenge of doing these pulls and really also enjoy the income that they're making from all this gold. So it's not even really like one side's gaining benefit and like another side isn't. It's really just beneficial for everybody.
Yeah, I found myself in a great position going into GDKP this past weekend, which is I had the most gold that I ever had from a week of boosting, and I turned that into a nice fancy BWL cloak, which really represented my biggest upgrade on my mage, and I gotta thank some time spent in SM learning those pulls and looting and getting paid for it, which really just, if you're a mage and you're in the vicinity of Scarlet Monastery, give yourself 10 minutes and you're going to have a full group.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. Right now, there's basically always someone in looking for a group, either at Scarlet Monastery or in a major city, trying to find room for boosting for them, plus usually their friends.
Yeah, absolutely. With that going on right now, things have been ramping up on Blizzard's end with COVID-19 going on and potentially having an impact on the queues. We got a little bit of a look at what their solution to the queue times were, and it's had some mixed reviews depending on what your experience has been. Of course, we're talking about the free server transfers that have opened up since then, and subsequently, some of the servers that have gotten shut down from having players either go to them or, in some cases, even move off of them.
So I'm sure there are a handful of people from those high pop servers, White Main, and so on, that said, okay, free server transfers, we're tired of these really long queues, let's go to like a medium pop server and just enjoy this game. So for those tiny fraction of a percentage of this population, they did the right thing, and they're probably in a much better position right now than they were before on their 4-hour queue White Main. Everybody else, it's just gotten worse, because either tons of people all transferred to one server from several of these servers, creating these crazy faction imbalances, or they all transferred to already relatively full servers, making queues on other places even worse than they were to begin with, and not even really solving overall the problems on their original servers.
Yeah, what we've seen here is almost a shuffle of the identity of a lot of servers. One of the ones that has been most impacted has been Incendious, so much so that if you're a Horde player, your ability to transfer off of Incendious was taken from you. Kind of a stark difference from what the original purpose of this was, right? It was supposed to be supposedly servicing some of these overpopulated realms, and what we ended up with was another Alliance Haven potentially opening up. One of the other servers that seemed to be getting affected was Earth Fury, which I think became the recipient of a lot of those people that were trying to get off of Incendious. And really what happened is if your server had an identity one day, it might have been completely flipped upside down by the very next day, which if your ability to transfer off that server gotten taken from you, that probably didn't really solve any problems, or maybe even created some that didn't exist in the first place. On the flip side of that, if you were on White Mane, Faralina, and all of that, and your server time might have not improved because people were actually trying to get over there for some reason.
Yeah, I mean, one of the problems I mean we even see with Grobulus is that even though there haven't been a ton of transfers here, our near perfect faction balance for the first 6 months of this game has gone from 51 Alliance, 49 Horde to closer to 60-40 in the last week or so. If you look at login statistics, and I'm not even sure if that's 100% accurate. It could be worse than that.
We've definitely seen a trend sort of toward the Alliance for quite some time on Grobulus, and for the most part, because of the way Battlegrounds and everything plays out, I feel like the world still feels generally organic. But if you take a look at Warcraft logs, it tells a very clear picture that this is a Alliance-dominated server at the moment. But like I said, because of the way Battlegrounds and other things play out and how that has effect on world PvP, your experience it may vary quite a bit, actually, depending on who and where you're playing with.
Yeah, so I mean, I don't know how Blizzard can really fix this. Like, some of the problems seem very odd, because I know they've never really put like actual caps on servers. At least I don't remember that ever being a thing, or preventing players from creating characters there. But I don't know. There might be a need for some like forcible balance on Blizzard's part to sort of fix this problem.
I would almost go as far to say, as even if it wasn't for every server, I almost wish we did have a server that had some sort of a balancing to it. Maybe it's per account and not character, because if you're all your characters are on the same account, then you can only be on one at any given time anyways, so that economy effectively is the same. But maybe at a certain point, new accounts can't be making certain characters on certain factions, just so that it promotes this idea that we're going to be raising up a little bit more evenly.
Yeah, and I mean, there's definitely some downsides to that, because like, if your friend decides I want to come back and play, like even now we have some, I have some good friends who I played with through, from Classic to Mists of Pandaria that are just now leveling in Classic because of the pandemic. Like, they just decided to reactivate their account. So I don't think there's a solid solution to that in terms of. I mean, maybe they leave like certain slots open and allow like newcomers to a server to create characters on that server, assuming that they have, a friend who already has a max level character on that server, or someone on their friends list is already playing on that server. Something like that as a gatekeeper. I don't know.
Yeah, one of the things that's intrinsic to me wanting to play this game is that I get to play it with friends. And if that doesn't happen, then my ability to want to continue to log in diminishes very quickly.
So yeah, maybe Blizzard has to have a heavy hand and forcibly balance some of these crazy unbalanced servers, and then just make it so new accounts can only create characters on these servers if if they have a friend who's already established on that server. Although, I wonder honestly, because I mean I know quite a few people with this situation. How many people have duplicate accounts? Like how much of the server population is people with 3, 4, 5 accounts on active with alts, or people who multi-box? I wonder what percent of the population is the same person.
Yeah, this would actually kind of pose an interesting thing for multi-boxers, right? Like, you're all the same person, but you do technically take up more real estate than one person, which in my kind of viewpoint, that kind of just sort of counts as another person, like it is another account. It has, whether it's a single person or not controlling it, that entity still exists within the world. And like, I think that would have to be part of a balancing like that at the end of the day.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, obviously, like, Blizzard multi-boxers are cool, and they're not a thing that like Blizzard would ever really ban. But there are a whole lot of people who just have a second account so they can like duo stuff on their own, or so they can, they're farming on one account while they're doing something on a different account. I don't know. Maybe that would be a thing. I mean, Blizzard never cracked down on that though, because it's additional income.
Yeah, and that's probably why we've never seen them attempt anything like trying to balance out the servers in such a way, because at the end of the day, that is a gate to creating another account or another character, and that's kind of against really what they're trying to accomplish in getting us to have more accounts and have more characters in the World of Warcraft. And quite frankly, I think a lot of us are at that 2-account stage at this point, and we like to keep it that way, and not being able to play in a certain way would sort of diminish that a little bit.
See, I think some, and I mean, I feel like we always end up coming back to this, but I think some slight changes to the game itself would make it so that you didn't really need a second account. Like I don't know, guild banks, faction banks, like bigger, the ability to bank stuff. I just don't understand why people are so interested in playing with a character on a separate account. Like, I don't know. It just confuses me. If you want a hunter so you can farm Dire Maul North, why does it matter whether that hunter's on your primary account or on a different account? Like, what is it that you need to be doing on your main character while you're farming Dire Maul North?
Yeah, I think in that particular case, it doesn't make a lot of sense, but say, for example, I've had the thought of leveling up a shaman on a separate account, and that would give my warrior this constant Wind Fury bot, right? Like, even if I didn't play the shaman particularly well on the other account, I would always have some resources that would beef up my main account. And I think there's a little bit of play like that, and that's certainly always existed in MMOs. The other thing that I think is really important to that sort of dual boxing lifestyle is the ability to trade within yourself and your own account, and, not have to deal with the mail, not have to deal with another person being the character that trades you your own items, and little things like that that could absolutely be rethought of that wouldn't at all impact the way people view the game.
Yeah, see, that is an incredibly tiny solution. Like, making it so mail between your characters is instant solves that on one of those problems, and that doesn't like negatively affect the game at all. There's no, I don't see the point.
Yeah, I can understand there's probably some sort of, we'll probably call it like a real money trading reason that they want to maybe hold back some of these things that really just end up affecting the regular players that are just trying to go about the game. And that's kind of one of those things that, balance out too, which is how many of these things are protective measures for just some of the other maybe more nefarious things that are going on in the game that, ultimately are probably good services to have in place. But really at the end of the day, if we're having to open up second accounts to facilitate some of these things and be our guild banks and be all of these extra services that we need, it kind of makes some sense that we, streamline some of that, and it might solve some of the other problems in that midst. So the server transfers are going to be continuing on for the foreseeable future, at least, and we're going to continue to see whether certain servers pop up and down. But next week, we're going to be seeing the dropping of Zul'Gurub, and regardless of what server you're on, once you hit that instance, it's not going to matter who's on your server. Zul'Gurub is live, and it is going to be a great experience. What are you looking forward to in ZG Myth?
Well, let's see. There's a huge list of stuff. First of all, really awesome enchants for most classes. There are a few people who are going to be kind of disappointed with their class enchants, but for the most part, getting to Honored and getting that enchant is going to be the goal of most players as soon as possible. Good suggestion for anybody who's planning on pushing for Exalted. You really want to save rep turn-ins, the coins and the bijous, for when you're revered. Think of it just like the Argent Dawn rep.
Yeah,
Because
this
I
is one of
believe,
those things where you're going to save yourself a lot of time in the long run by stockpiling those and being patient and getting to revered through the normal means, and then give yourself a nice little head start on getting to exalted once those are taken from you a little bit more.
well, if I'm not mistaken, I think you get rep for trash killing, and I don't think it continues to give you rep at revered. Well, I mean, we'll verify that in a week, but I think most of the, like, Blizzard's philosophy at this point is like trash gives you rep until revered for most dungeons. So that way in AQ for sure you'll get rep killing trash in AQ 40 all the way up to revered, and the same thing goes for. I'm pretty sure the same thing goes here. You'll still get rep for bosses, but nothing for that. So saving rep turn-ins is good. I mean, I'm excited to start seeing more 18 slot bags. The Panther Hide sack, even though it's unique, it's still nice. We can start handing those out to different people who don't have shitloads of Oni bags at this point.
Yeah, this is a big one too, because Onyxia bags and bottomless bags have continued to go up in value, and there's never going to be enough of them going out to fill the need of people that want them. So this is going to be one of those things where new 18 slot bag is definitely in my crosshairs. I have an amount that I'm willing to pay for one, and if I can get it at that price, great, and if not. So I'm happy to see that new bag for sure.
And then obviously the mounts are huge. The raptor and the tiger. I mean, everybody's after the tiger, and at least on Horde side, the raptor is definitely, I would say, just as cool for Alliance because there's no other raptor mount.
Yeah, I mean, just any new addition to the variety of mounts that we can ride in Classic, to me, is a welcome addition. And I certainly don't want like a shop where you can buy a bunch of mounts, and I'm not looking for anything like that, but variety is definitely nice when it's an earned or it's the lucky drop kind of a thing. And those types of improvements, those in-game ways to get yourself a new mount, I think is something that a lot of players are going to be looking forward to.
And then that's not even to talk about like how the economy is going to shift. So we were earlier talking about mage boosting. A lot of boosting is going to disappear this week because a lot of mages are going to be croc farming to get Bijou and coin drops solo in ZG.
Yeah, I know this is one that's right at the top of my list of things to do once ZG hits because of the importance of getting that rep grind. And one of the things that's great is if you are a player that has a level 60 mage, you can use that to your advantage in getting your main the exalted rep much quicker by getting in there and AoEing those crocs.
Yeah, even if you're not good enough to solo it and you want to do it with two people, either do it with two mages or a mage and a resto shaman, or it's still pretty productive.
Yeah, absolutely. And the main thing too that's going to really drive some participation in ZG is the release of the Bloodvine gear, which many casters are licking their lips in anticipation at that plus to hit that is accompanied on those pieces.
Yeah, it's incredibly good. On top of, I mean, this is great loot throughout the instance. A lot of really good random epics, a lot of like several like standout blues, including some of the ring sets. The polymorph turtle book comes out. That'll be big.
Me, like, I've been really looking at the Mooncloth market, for example, as another opportunity within this to squeeze a little bit of extra money out, right? I have several characters now that I leveled up for the purpose of making Mooncloth, and with so much of a demand going for Bloodvine and some of those items, there's going to be a few areas where you can profit even just from some passive income within the game. So there's the items that are going to be good to get. There's the craftables. There's going to be the coins, the bijous. There's a lot that's going to be in ZG that's exciting right out the gate.
Yeah, and it's going to be a pretty impactful week. It's pretty crazy that they're releasing ZG and then it's resetting the next day. So next week is a possible 3 ZG clear week if you do it the night that it comes out.
I honestly have to say, I like that play from Blizzard because I think most of us would like to do ZG again the next day, to be perfectly honest, right? I'm very excited to go into ZG the first day. I'm equally excited to get to do it twice, right? Like that second time around, just for the same reason that I would be to do, Molten Core. This is kind of the opposite almost that I feel like what happened with Arathi Basin, where they released this new battleground and then they gave us a different weekend. This is almost like giving us a little bit more of what we've waited for, and I support that. I want to get into ZG and I want to spend some time there because it's new. One of the other things that's going to be coming out though is the green dragons, and to a little bit more of a casual side, the STV's fishing extravaganza.
So the fishing's great. That's going to be, I mean, there's a lot of people who enjoy fishing who are going to do that, but that's also a pretty good low-level twink helmet. I think doesn't the helmet have like 15 stam?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's a beast for a helm of its level, without a doubt.
Yeah, like for like a level 19 twink, there's going to be a lot of 19 twinks fishing on the weekends. For sure. But yeah, I forgot about the green dragons. I feel like they're sort of an afterthought, but they do have a lot of really good pieces. They're just going to be like pretty hotly contested.
Well, I think this is going to be kind of a fun thing to keep track of. New world bosses is going to help mix up the current meta, which I would say is maybe a little bit more apathetic than it was at the start. I think when the world bosses hit, they were really ripe and contested. Now some people are like, I could take it or leave it at this point. There's definitely some people that are interested, but new bosses and new gear in the mix is going to not only give us some more options, but I think it's going to give choices. And what you're going to see is maybe there's some guilds that are going to try and hit a specific boss. They're going to all log out at one, or maybe there's going to be some that try and hit multiples, but there's going to be some strategy involved in getting those opening day bosses.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're gonna try and do some. It really just depends on where, like, how. I don't know. I honestly don't know, because I probably killed maybe like 2 or 3 green dragons back in actual classic. I wasn't really like super paying attention to them, but I'm curious how frequently they spawn.
Yeah, that part I don't remember. I remember doing them all at least once, and maybe even an extra time, and just like a lot of things, classic versus vanilla, it feels like we go through everything so much quicker than we did before. So it's like it's hard for me to really gauge, a lot of that. I remember having some epic battles over the dragons, but it's kind of, difficult to say like how much they were spawning and, some of these other dynamics that, how it's even going to play out compared to classic, where we really do have much larger populations. I think we're going to maybe see something a little bit more similar to like what we have now, where when they're up, we're going to have pretty much a battle for it unless you can get there before anybody else does. But beyond that, I'm not quite sure.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's definitely something to see. I think Kazakh and Azragos were so hotly contested when they first came out because it was also the release of World PvP, or rather, World PvP Mattering.
Right, having the honor system attached to that is huge, because for all of the flaws in the honor system, the one thing that you can say about it is it gets people out and fighting each other. And whether you loved Phase 2 or you hated it, it put the world at war. And World of Warcraft, in my opinion, feels a little bit more authentic when there's a little bit of rivalry between the two factions. And some of those wounds have not healed yet.
Some of them have gotten even worse recently.
Yeah, we've seen this especially on our server. And I think this has actually become not only just our server, but it's another one of those World of Warcraft-wide phenomenons. Blackrock Mountain is as lethal as it's ever been in its history, and the sport of taking world buffs is now at I would say at an all-time high.
I don't really know why people think this is a fun thing to do. It's always frustrating when it happens to you. So, like, people think that because they're on the internet, it's okay to treat people in a way that, like, you would never want someone to treat you. I don't know. I understand that it's a game, and it's, like, competitive. It's not really like I'd much rather like fight someone fairly than like just exist in a way in an attempt in a way to like grief them out of world buffs for their raid.
Yeah, we've definitely gotten some regular offenders, and there's, it's a chain reaction, right? Like, so you've got this one character there who's going and purging some buffs, and then, well, that person says, well, screw that guy. I'll go make my own character to purge their buffs. And then it escalates to the point where every time you are even thinking about going into Blackrock Mountain, it's send the scouts, figure out who's there, how many guilds are there, is anybody occupying, are those buffs at risk? And it's become a regular part of life on our server especially. But I mean, again, it started to really become a server-wide thing, and I wonder if it was just a natural reaction to the game progressing to this point, right? We've all been around so long, we're looking for some more things to do, or is it really just because there's some wounds that are just not healed yet, and they got to take it out in the world buffs?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know the actual answer to that. I wish it weren't the case. I wish, yeah, I don't know. Maybe it'd be nice if like world buffs would last through death, or if they were consumable you could eat once a week, so that like the griefing didn't exist. Because the PvP doesn't bother me. It's just the fact that it's people trying to grief others that's the problem. It's just incredibly negative behavior, and it's honestly not good for the life of the game. Like it's bad everywhere. It's bad in MOBAs. It's bad in FPS games, and it's bad in MMOs.
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan myself, but on the flip side, what I would say I definitely notice about the behavior is it does intensify the rivalries, and it gets the Horde and Alliance back to, where I would almost say this generation has maybe more quote-unquote collusion than we ever did back in vanilla. I would also say the battles are more intense too. So it's almost like we've hit these two extremes, right? We either have complete warfare between the two sides or like almost total cooperation. And the game has lost a little bit of its authenticity, I guess, if you would say, in a certain sense, right? If you know that there's always going to be this risk of world buffs getting taken away, it really changes your behavior. But at the same time, it kind of prepares you for war too, which, we had a pretty good moment where we were trying to get ourselves into Blackwing Lair. We were cornered, a group had found us, and what it really prompted was, we counted out and said, hey, wait a second, I think we could take these guys, and we did it. It was a good little battle, honestly.
Yeah, and I mean, it's fun, but I don't know. I feel like it's world buffs just make it all worse. Like world PvP, even like Blackrock Mountain camping and like trying to prevent guilds from getting to their raid on time, like that still wouldn't be that bad if it weren't for like the degenerate behavior of like purposefully trying to screw up buffs. Like if the buffs just didn't exist, I feel like it'd be a better place.
At the end of the day, it puts the emphasis on what the problem is. Are world buffs even really good and healthy for the game, I think, is the question at hand. And we're starting to see some of the, the negative side effects. And, for me, I would say the biggest impact that it has on myself is I do like to get them all. And that's a kind of a long commitment, honestly. And if I don't get them in a specific order, it kind of jeopardizes that. So it really takes a lot of carefully planned out intent. And that's sort of a lot just to go in and do a raid. It seems like it's a little bit more than what's necessary to get the most out of the game itself.
I think the whole time it's been negative. You spend an entire day. I mean, less than that, honestly, if you're super good at it. But like, you spend typically several hours getting your Dire Maw buff, getting your Fellwood buff, waiting for Onyxia head if you're Horde, waiting for War Chief, and then you just log your character out and you don't do anything on that character. You're like forced to not play that character for some period of time. Maybe it's a day because you have to work, so you're getting them early. Maybe it's just a few hours because you're getting them before your raid. And then all the work you put in is just wasted if you die, if they get purged, if, someone screws up and you pull aggro on a Molten Destroyer and get 2-shot.
Or even if you get over the buff cap, honestly.
Yeah, we had a tank this week who lost 2 world buffs. I think he lost Songflower and Onyxia because he got over buff cap. So all of these things are just all they do is they make you feel bad. You feel like adequate when you have them, and you feel bad when you don't have them. So
yeah, and that actually is a really good point, right? The standard has not been play your character as it is. The standard is you need to play your character at maximum efficiency, and anything less than that is the unacceptable thing, right? It's no longer acceptable to play your character as your character. You have to play your character as its most maximized, realized version of itself. And again, I'm as guilty as anybody of that. I try not to check out mentally. I try and pride myself on always staying a competitor no matter what the situation is, really. But I'm as guilty as anybody. When my world buffs go down, there's definitely that thought hit my head that goes like, well, there goes all the chances at 99s.
Yeah, it's the same thing. It's the same thing with me as a tank. When I lose all my world buffs on some dumb trash pull because, I don't know, the healers weren't prepared for me to take some damage that way. I don't not try, but I don't try at the same level. Like, I definitely lose enthusiasm to, like, try and push myself. Because I know that without the 350 attack power, 1000 HP, 10% crit, and 15% attack speed, I'm doing so much less damage.
Well, the thing that's crazy is when you add it all up the way that you just did, think about how much more impactful those buffs are than any single piece of equipment that you could have. It's the kind of thing that could take, somebody in a set of blues and have them have better stats than somebody in all epics.
I mean, 10% crit, 350 AP, attack speed's not even a stat. So just 10% crit and 300 AP is like the difference between my DPS gear and almost having full max DPS gear. Like, just base.
Yeah, that's pretty dramatic, honestly, and you'll absolutely see it in, the damage meters after, maybe half of the raid wipes or whatever. The group that still has those buffs is cruising right along, and that, again, it just adds that pressure of that's the character's new baseline rather than the character as itself, which it's a dimension to raiding that can, like we said, it can diminish that feeling depending on the way that you're approaching it.
Yeah, it's just frustrating. I don't know. Like I said, I don't like them. I get them, but it's always frustrating because I don't wanna stop playing my character the day that I get them. But if I don't get them early enough, I end up like 2 weeks ago where I ended up not even getting Oni because I missed both Onis and both Nef heads before our raid. Like, I was just not logged in at the right times and just ended up going to Blackwing Lair 2 weeks ago with just Dire Maul and Songflower.
Well, and even this was something that was brought up by Blizzard, right? The act of doing things like, resetting a buff or whatever, it can be really, really helpful. But there's this flip side of it, which is people can get very frustrated over the buffs too, and it can become a source of harassment even. And it's just another one of those layers where you go like, yeah, I love getting those buffs, but I wish there were a couple things that we could do to tweak it so that the experience was maybe a little bit better for everybody involved. One thing, though, that isn't frustrating is this upcoming event in just a couple of days. Free drinks in Booty Bay, hosted by White Claw Clan on April 14th. Hopefully this podcast will be up and on the Grub subreddit before this happens. So if you're maybe having to still socially distance a little bit, maybe break a little bit of that in World of Warcraft and get yourself some free drinks, courtesy of White Claw Clan in Booty Bay.
Isn't White Claw an alcoholic beverage?
It is. So maybe a very fitting name for the free drinks for all clan for this event. I have a feeling, though, maybe it doesn't have anything to do with the drink. We should have somebody on and ask them.
Yeah, you heard it here first. White Claw Clan is sponsored by White Claw Hard Seltzer. It's very clearly a connection. It's just like the Guild Hurricane is very clearly all related to that song, "Rock You Like a Hurricane."
Absolutely.
I've never actually had a White Claw.
They're actually not too. It's a great like summer at the fair drink. I think if you're into like that sort of a thing. I almost want to say like it has the rep of being like this generation's like Smirnoff Ice or something like that. If you get that kind of what's its negative connotation about that.
Hold on, I happen to like Smirnoff Ice. No, wait, no, I think I was mixing Smirnoff Ice up with what's that lemonade?
Oh, Mike's
That
Hard Lemonade, which also falls into the same category, I would say, as Smirnoff Ice.
Mike's is refreshing on like a hot summer day.
I
I
don't
don't know.
necessarily disagree with you, although the more Mike's that I drank, the more I realized how sugary it tasted and how that kind of diminished it in the long run.
I mean, it is lemonade. You got to put sugar in lemonade.
This is true.
Yeah, I guess it is. It is probably pretty sugary. I haven't had one in years, but I don't know. I used to drink them every now and again.
My go-to a long time ago actually became, if I was looking for a drink in that sort of a zone, I was big on pear cider, like especially if it was out of a tap, like Wider's pear cider out of the tap is absolutely delicious and refreshing. It's got a little bit of a kick to it. And it's a little bit more flavorful, less sugary than I found something like a hard lemonade to be. So I would recommend to anybody, try out like a hard cider. Apple ciders are good too. There's a bunch of those as well. I found those to be my go-to drink when I was looking for something in that zone.
Sounds. I mean, I've had hard apple ciders. They're not bad, so I could see that.
My big thing though is always out of the tap, right? Like I enjoyed it a lot. I've got some bottles of pear cider before. It doesn't hit me the same as when I went to the restaurant and ordered it and got it fresh out the tap. There's just it's that extra level of refreshment. Beer kind of is the same way for me too. I'm not a huge beer drinker, but if I can get a beer that I like fresh out the tap, that's very refreshing.
Yeah, I lived in Colorado for a while, and they have quite a few breweries out there. One of which is in the mountains. It's called Tommyknockers. And the thing that they actually had that like it made the trip worthwhile because it was like an hour away from where I lived. Was on top of the fact that they brewed a bunch of their own beers, they also brewed their own root beer, and homemade like off the tap root beer is like the most delicious thing that I've ever had.
Oh gosh, yeah, absolutely. Root beer too is one of those things where again, we get so much sugary flavor, but if you actually get to taste the actual flavor of it and you get something like where it's right out of the tap or it's not overly sugary, it can be absolutely refreshing and just something that can be an absolute treat. Great.
Yeah, it was definitely a treat. I only probably went there like once or twice a year because of how far away it was, but it's hard to decide to drive an hour for some root beer.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know if root beer hits that drive an hour zone that I'm normally looking at. I think it's more of something like, ooh, hey, they have this here. I'll try that.
Oh, it was good enough to where once or twice it was worth the trip.
But definitely, if you're looking for a little bit of in-game drinking, try out that White Claw Clan hosted event coming up in just a couple of days. Another big one, Redwood Tribe's Thunder Bluff Festival of Peace. This is on May 2nd. I don't have a lot of details about this yet, but I have the feeling that we're going to be hearing some more here in the upcoming weeks as this leads up to this event. I'm excited to see what the Redwood Tribes have brewing for us over in Thunder Bluff.
Yeah, that's 20 days away, so I'm sure we'll hear a lot more about that in the next like 2 weeks.
Yeah, I've definitely got my ear to the ground, and Redwood Tribes, if you want to give us a preview of what's to come, definitely reach out. We would love to talk to you about that event. Anything else going on the server Grobulus this week, Myth?
Not that I can think of. I mean, I'm gonna enjoy the power leveling while it's available. As soon as Wednesday comes out, that's gonna stop for a while. Yeah, just be excited to run ZG a bunch.
Yeah, I think we're going to be seeing a lot of ZG groups popping up. I think we're going to see lots of pug groups for that. So if you're a player on the server Agrobulus, just keep your eyes open, and I bet you're going to find yourself into a lot of great ZG situations just based off of the reception that I've seen from, pretty much everyone, man. We're excited for some new content.
Yeah, it should be a fun week.
Absolutely. All right, well, with that being said, that's all we've got this week. If you enjoyed the show, please like and subscribe on YouTube and on SoundCloud. We record this show live right around 5:30 every week on my Twitch channel, Mickey_Mao. I would love it if you came and joined us and checked out the live show. You also get a lot of the RP event announcements in time, so if I don't happen to get the show all edited and up, you can get this stuff, on time. Of course, as always, we appreciate everybody that sends us messages in game on the subreddit. And if you have anything you want to talk about on the show, just let us know. All right, well, thank you once again for listening. We will catch you all next week.